Imagine being erased from existence, not by violence, but by design. No public execution, no dramatic betrayal. Just a slow, systematic vanishing act while you're still breathing. In today's hyper-connected world, we fear being canceled or ghosted. But what if that erasure was mandated by a king, a court, or even a system? Today, Dark Truth Files delves into the chilling historical tutorial of Anne of Cleves, Henry VIII's fourth wife. Her story isn't about escaping a dungeon. It's about being trapped in a gilded cage, a psychological prison far more insidious than any iron bars. Lesson 1. The Art of Political Strategy. When kingdoms play chess with lives. Every major power, from Tudor England to modern-day Washington, D.C., understands that alliances are built on strategic moves, sometimes involving unexpected pawns. Henry VIII's quest for a new wife was no different. It was a geopolitical maneuver disguised as a search for love. Step 1. The urgent need for alliances. England's vulnerable position. Henry VIII had irrevocably broken from the Roman Catholic Church, establishing himself as the head of the Church of England. This bold move left him isolated from the powerful Catholic nations of Europe. He desperately needed new political friends to solidify his position and protect his kingdom. Cromwell's vision. His shrewd chief minister, Thomas Cromwell, saw a brilliant opportunity, forging an alliance with the Protestant German states. In an era where diplomatic ties were often sealed by blood, marriage was the ultimate strategic tool. Step 2. Identifying the perfect match. Anne of Cleves. The diplomatic bridge. Anna von Jülich-Klaverberg, known as Anne of Cleves. Hailed from a small but strategically crucial duchy on the Rhine, she was of appropriate noble birth and came from a Protestant family, making her an ideal candidate to bridge the gap between England and the German states. At 24, unmarried and available, she seemed politically perfect. The unseen flaws, however, Anne was raised traditionally, skilled in household management and basic literacy. But she spoke no English and had little exposure to the sophisticated, cutthroat court culture that defined Henry's England. This language and cultural barrier would prove to be a fatal vulnerability, a ticking time bomb in her royal future. Step 3. The Illusions of a Masterpiece. Holbein's commission to secure Henry's crucial approval. Cromwell dispatched Hans Holbein the Younger, the king's most skilled portrait artist, to paint Anne's likeness. Holbein was renowned for capturing not just physical appearance, but the very essence of his subjects. The deceptive charm. Holbein's 1539 portrait presented Anne as an attractive, dignified woman with clear skin, intelligent eyes, and the bearing of nobility. Henry, nearing 50 and tired of past marital turbulences, was reportedly charmed by the painting. He saw her as a promise of peace and stability. The marriage negotiations proceeded swiftly, with treaties signed and dowries negotiated, and embarked on her journey from Germany to England in late 1539. She arrived, weakened by seasickness and the stress of leaving everything familiar behind. She knew little of English customs or language. This was more than just a journey to a new country. It was a journey to an entirely different world. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared her for the moment her future husband, King Henry VIII, laid eyes on her for the first time. That single glance would not just shatter her dreams, but effectively seal her fate as a living ghost. Lesson 2. The Anatomy of Royal Rejection. The Silent Humiliation. This lesson illustrates how swift and devastating a monarch's displeasure could be, transforming a royal match into a public humiliation, and how personal aversion can override all political logic. Step 1. The devastating first impression. Henry's profound disappointment. The highly anticipated first meeting occurred at Rochester. Henry, expecting the idealized woman from Holbein's portrait, was instead confronted with what he perceived as a profound disappointment. Whether it was a genuine difference in appearance, her demeanor, or simply the clash of cultures and expectations, the king was immediately and viscerally repelled. barely concealed disgust. Contemporary accounts describe Henry's reaction as barely concealed disgust and anger. He reportedly muttered about being deceived and trapped, expressing his displeasure to his courtiers in no uncertain terms. Accustomed to getting his way, he found himself politically committed to a marriage that had become personally repugnant to him. Anne's crushing realization. For Anne, this was a devastating revelation. She had crossed hundreds of miles, leaving her home and family, only to discover her future husband found her presence offensive. The language barrier prevented her from understanding the whispers, but Henry's body language and the sudden tension were impossible to misinterpret. In that moment, her fate was sealed, not by an executioner's decree, but by a king's personal revulsion. Step 2. The doomed nuptials. Political obligation prevails. Despite his intense private feelings, Henry was politically committed to proceeding with the marriage. Backing out would have created an international incident and damaged England's crucial alliances with Protestant states. The joyless ceremony. On January 6, 1540. Henry and Anne were married at Greenwich Palace in a ceremony described as notably lacking in joy or celebration. Henry performed his duties with obvious reluctance. The unconsummated union. Most critically, the marriage was never consummated. Henry's personal revulsion meant he could not bring himself to fulfill the basic expectations of matrimony. This failure had immediate political implications, as producing an heir was paramount for a royal marriage. For Anne, this was the most personal and devastating aspect. She was deemed not just politically inconvenient, but physically unacceptable to her own husband. As weeks bled into months, it became chillingly clear. This marriage could not endure. Henry began exploring legal options for annulment. His rage also spelled doom for Thomas Cromwell, the man who arranged the match, who was blamed for the king's unhappiness. Anne was caught in an untenable situation, married to a man who despised her, unable to fulfill her queenly duties, and increasingly isolated. The court atmosphere was poisonous with tension and uncertainty. But why was this unconsummated marriage born of a king's personal revulsion? More dangerous for some than even alleged treason. The answer lies in the chilling power dynamics of a ruler who could erase you without a single drop of blood. Lesson 3. The Gilded Cage. How comfort becomes a prison. This lesson delves into the insidious nature of control, where material comfort is used as a tool to enforce silence and compliance, creating a life that is outwardly opulent but inwardly empty. This concept resonates even in modern power structures, from corporate environments to political exile. Step 1. The annulment and the scapegoats fall. Henry's justification. By spring 1540, Henry demanded the marriage end. He exploited a legal technicality, an alleged prior engagement of Anne's, to declare the marriage invalid. Despite knowing it had been dismissed before, this legal fiction allowed him to dissolve the union without admitting his own fault. Cromwell's execution. Thomas Cromwell, having become the convenient scapegoat, was arrested on charges of treason and heresy. His execution in July 1540 was a brutal message, a warning to others about the consequences of disappointing the king. For Anne, Cromwell's death meant losing her main supporter and confirmation of Henry's deadly displeasure. Anne's strategic submission. Faced with the chilling examples of Anne Boleyn's execution, Anne chose submission. In July 1540, she appeared before the Convocation of Canterbury and agreed her marriage to Henry was invalid. This cooperation allowed Henry to appear as a victim, not the architect of failure. Step 2. The transformation into the king's beloved sister. The annulment's aftermath. On July 9, 1540, less than 6 months after the wedding, the marriage was formally annulled. This marked Anne's transformation from queen to state-sponsored exile. A title without power. She was granted the honorary title of the king's beloved sister. This acknowledged her high birth but firmly removed her from any romantic or political influence. This title would define her status for the next 17 years. The chains of gold. Anne received an annual income of £500 and several properties, including Richmond, Palace, and Chelsea Manor. This made her one of England's wealthiest women. However, this generosity came with implicit understanding. She must remain in England, avoid political involvement, and never challenge the annulment's legitimacy. She was also required to acknowledge Henry as her sovereign and accept his religious authority. A permanent resident alien. This arrangement made her a permanent resident alien. In England, neither truly English nor able to return to her German homeland. The generous financial provisions were, in reality, a gilded cage designed to ensure her silence and compliance. She was a very well-compensated prisoner, where the bars of her cell were made of protocol and expectation rather than iron. The public narrative praised Henry's mercy, portraying Anne as grateful and content. But the private reality was starkly different. She was a woman publicly humiliated, stripped of her royal status, and relegated to permanent marginalization. Her survival was constantly highlighted as proof of Henry's benevolence, masking the fundamental cruelty of her position. How do you survive when your survival itself is a performance, a constant reminder of your own inadequacy, and your comfort is a daily monument to everything you've lost? Lesson 4. The social death, erased while still breathing. This lesson explores the profound psychological impact of forced irrelevance. Where a person exists in comfort but without purpose, slowly dying inside. This concept is terrifyingly relevant to modern discussions of social isolation and purpose. Step 1. Life in limbo. A unique position. At 25, Anne found herself in a position with no precedent in European nobility. Neither wife nor widow, neither foreign princess nor English subject, neither politically significant nor entirely powerless. She existed in a liminal space, a diminished household. Richmond Palace became her primary residence, but it symbolized her reduced status. She ruled over a small household whose loyalty was ultimately to the king. Formal respect, zero influence. Court protocol demanded respect for her honorary title. But she wielded no actual influence or authority. Courtiers saw her as a curious relic. She attended functions as a subordinate guest, never truly participating in power. Step 2. Isolation and degradation. Linguistic and cultural barriers. Despite learning English, she never fully mastered the subtle nuances of court conversation, hindering any political influence. Her German background now made her permanently foreign. Her staff were chosen by Henry's government, ensuring royal oversight even in her intimate circles. The weight of dependence. Every comfort she enjoyed came from the king who had rejected her. This dependence created a psychological dynamic that was both sustaining and degrading. She was kept in comfort, but at the price of acknowledging her own inadequacy and failure. The wealth was a daily reminder of everything she had lost. An anachronistic existence. Anne became an anachronistic figure, a living reminder of that failed arrangement. Her presence at court was a testament to Henry's mercy, but also a subtle reminder of his power. The psychological impact of this prolonged marginalization was profound, though hidden. She had lost her sense of purpose and place in the world. Step 3. The normalization of cruelty. Society's acceptance. The most chilling aspect was how completely her situation was normalized by English society. Courtiers spoke of her marginalization as natural and appropriate, praising Henry's generosity while ignoring the fundamental cruelty. A symbol, not a person. The woman who was once queen was now treated as a cautionary tale and a symbol of royal mercy, but never as a person with her own needs, desires, and dignity. She was a living monument to Henry's power, valued only for her silence and compliance. Political obsolescence. Cromwell's death meant complete political irrelevance for Anne. Henry quickly abandoned the Cleves alliance, making Anne personally rejected, but also politically obsolete. Her presence became increasingly awkward. Anne's story is a terrifying tutorial on the unseen violence of the powerful. She attended the weddings of Henry's subsequent wives, including Catherine Howard, a profound humiliation presented as an honor. She survived the execution of Catherine Howard, standing as a walking advertisement for submission and compliance. Her survival, celebrated by the court, came at the complete surrender of her autonomy, dignity, and purpose. It was a form of social death that was perhaps more cruel than the physical death that had claimed her predecessors. Her story isn't just history. It's a chilling, timeless warning about the true cost of surviving absolute power. Lesson 5. The Enduring Shadow. A life defined by absence. Anne's final years were a testament to the cumulative toll of stress, isolation, and a life devoid of purpose. Her survival was a paradox, a life lived in the shadows of what might have been. Step 1. The weight of years. Physical and mental toll. As the 1540s progressed, Anne's health began to show the strain of her prolonged stress and isolation. Contemporary accounts suggest various ailments, possibly respiratory problems, combined with the profound loneliness of her existence. Yet, she was required to maintain the appearance of contentment and gratitude. Navigating new reigns. Henry VIII's death in 1547 and the subsequent reigns of Edward VI and Mary I brought new uncertainties. Anne had to constantly adapt to changing political landscapes, always maintaining her politically invisible status. Her Protestant background was a complex factor, sometimes an asset, sometimes a liability. Step 2. The Final Retreat. Diminished presence. During Edward VI's reign, Anne's life settled into an even more pronounced pattern of irrelevance and isolation. Her ceremonial role became minimal, and her existence was increasingly anachronistic. Mary I's tolerance. Mary I, despite being Catholic, surprisingly tolerated Anne's presence, allowing her to retain properties and income, but always with the understanding of political invisibility. Anne's marginalization, already profound, became even more complete. Illness and utter solitude. Anne's final years were marked by increasing illness and isolation. Her respiratory problems worsened. The psychological toll of her prolonged marginalization likely contributed to her physical decline. Tragically, her final years were spent without any meaningful human connections or relationships. She faced death as she had lived for 18 years, alone, marginalized, and fundamentally disconnected. Step 3. The Quiet End. A peaceful, solitary demise. In the summer of 1557, Anne's health rapidly deteriorated. On July 16, 1557, Anne of Cleves died at Chelsea Manor at the age of 41. Her death was peaceful but solitary, occurring in the same isolation that had characterized her life since the annulment 17 years earlier. The recorded cause was fever, likely related to her respiratory illness. The deeper cause of her death might be traced to the prolonged stress and marginalization that had defined her. Existence in England. A slow suffocation of purpose and dignity that had finally claimed her life. A subdued legacy. Her death attracted little attention or genuine grief from the English court. She was buried in Westminster Abbey, but her tomb was simple and understated. She was eulogized as a model of patience and submission. But these tributes failed to acknowledge the profound human cost of her survival or the waste of potential. In death, as in life, she was treated as a symbol rather than as a person. The true horror, her survival, was held up as evidence of Henry's mercy. But her isolation and suffering were carefully ignored or minimized. The official narrative insisted she was fortunate to escape a violent fate, but this ignored the psychological violence that had defined her existence. She was killed slowly and quietly through marginalization rather than execution, marking the end of a 17-year process of systematic erasure. Anne of Cleves' fate is not a tale of dramatic execution, but a haunting tutorial on the systematic destruction of human dignity and purpose. She was kept alive, not out of mercy, but as a living demonstration of royal power. Proof that Henry VIII could not only kill those who displeased him, but also reduce them to meaningless existence while they still drew breath. Her survival came at a cost that may have been higher than death itself: the complete surrender of everything that made survival worthwhile. For more chilling insights into history's darkest truths, make sure to subscribe to Dark Truth Files.